Jonathan Del Arco's Hugh Borg in Star Trek TNG and Picard explained. Jonathan Del Arco portrayed a former Borg drone named Hugh on Star Trek The Next Generation and returned years later in Star Trek Picard. The Borg first debuted in TNG Season 2 and went on to become one of the franchise's most formidable villains. Throughout TNG, Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart, defeated the Borg several times, most notably in the iconic two-parter The Best of Both Worlds. After the Borg assimilated Picard and turned him into their mouthpiece, Locutus, the Enterprise D captain, developed an understandable fear and even hatred of the Borg. Hugh came along in Star Trek The Next Generation Season 5, Episode 23, I, Borg, and completely changed the way Captain Picard and his crew understood the Borg. Jonathan Del Arco landed the role of Hugh in 1992 after a series of guest roles on other popular television shows. Del Arco continued to appear regularly on television throughout the 1990s and 2000s, before landing the more significant role of Dr. Fernando Morales on The Closer, a role he continued to portray on Major Crimes. Most recently, Del Arco has appeared in episodes of Criminal Minds and Station 19. In Star Trek The Next Generation's I, Borg, the USS Enterprise D crew found a crashed Borg ship with a single surviving drone. Dr. Beverly Crusher Gates McFadden refused to leave the drone to his fate, despite Captain Picard's trepidation about bringing a Borg onto the Enterprise. As Dr. Crusher and LT Commander Geordie LaForge, LeVar Burton, healed and repaired the Borg drone, he eventually began thinking of himself as an individual. Although Picard initially wanted to infect Hugh with a virus that would destroy the Borg collective, he changed his mind after interacting with Hugh. Despite the suffering Picard experienced at the hands of the Borg, he recognized that Hugh had become something different. Hugh wanted to remain on the Enterprise, but feared the collective would come after him. After Hugh returned to the collective, his sense of individualism spread to the other drones on his Borg cube. The collective disconnected his cube and left it drifting in space, where it was found by Data's evil twin brother, Lore. Lore took control of the drones and began performing cruel experiments on them. This led Hugh to form a resistance movement that later helped the Enterprise D crew against Lore. Hugh returned in Star Trek Picard Season 1, now an XB reclaimed ex-Borg, working as the executive director of the Borg reclamation projects operated by the Romulans on the derelict Borg cube known as the Artifact. Hugh did his best to help the former Borg drones reclaim their lives, but he grew increasingly frustrated by the dismissive way the Romulans treated the XBS. When Admiral Picard arrived at the Artifact in search of Soji Asha Isabriones, Hugh did not hesitate to help his old friend. Hugh told Picard about the Romulan spy named Narek, Harry Treadaway, who had recently arrived at the Artifact. Narek was working with his sister, Nerissa Peyton List, a Romulan Tal Shire colonel and a member of the Zhat Vash. Hugh helped Picard and Soji make their escape, transporting them to the planet Nepenthe. Hugh was captured by Nerissa but refused to give up Picard's location, even when Nerissa began executing XBS. When Hugh tried to activate the Artifact's Queensel and awaken the remaining drones, Nerissa killed Hugh. When Jonathan Del Arco stepped into the role of Hugh, the Borg drone in Star Trek The Next Generation TNG, it was a turning point not just for his career, but for the Star Trek universe itself. The character of Hugh, first introduced in the episode I, Borg, 1992, became a symbol of individuality and the complexities of collective consciousness, a theme that Star Trek frequently explores. Hugh's journey from an enslaved Borg drone to an autonomous being and eventually a leader in Star Trek Picard mirrors the franchise's broader commentary on freedom, identity, and redemption. Hugh's introduction in The Next Generation in TNG, the Borg are depicted as one of the most fearsome adversaries the Federation has ever encountered. A race of cybernetic organisms linked together in a collective, the Borg exist only to assimilate other species and grow stronger by absorbing their knowledge and technology. Resistance is futile. However, when the crew of the USS Enterprise D encounters a damaged Borg drone and I, Borg, they make a crucial discovery. This Borg, separated from the collective, begins to exhibit signs of individuality. This drone, later named Hugh by the crew, would challenge the black and white view of the Borg as a monolithic enemy. Jonathan Del Arco's portrayal of Hugh introduced layers of vulnerability and depth that had not been previously associated with the Borg. As the Enterprise crew, particularly Geordi LaForge and Dr. Beverly Crusher, interact with Hugh, they realize that underneath the mechanical implants, Hugh is a living being capable of thought and feeling. Hugh's development in TNG symbolizes a shift in the way the Star Trek universe views sentient beings. Even those who seem wholly defined by their collective nature may have the potential for individuality. Hugh's role in I, Borg, the episode I, Borg, is pivotal in the Star Trek franchise. When the crew finds Hugh, Captain Jean-Luc Picard is conflicted. Having previously been assimilated by the Borg and transformed into Locutus, Picard harbors deep resentment and trauma from his experiences with the collective. His initial reaction is to use Hugh as a weapon, to send him back to the Borg with a virus that would disrupt the entire collective. However, as the crew bonds with Hugh, they recognize his personhood, realizing that using him as a pawn would make them no better than the Borg themselves. Del Arco's portrayal of Hugh as a curious, almost childlike character, eager to learn about individuality, presents a stark contrast to the emotionless Borg drones audiences we're used to seeing. His development creates a moral quandary for the crew, especially Geordi LaForge, who becomes Hugh's primary caregiver and confidant. Hugh's eventual decision to return to the collective, knowing it might mean the loss of his individuality, adds a poignant layer to the character. Hugh's sacrifice is not just an act of bravery, but a gesture of compassion, as he returns to prevent the Borg from harming the Enterprise. Hugh's return in Star Trek Picard decades later, Jonathan Del Arco reprised his role as Hugh in Star Trek Picard 2020. Hugh's return in Picard was a highly anticipated moment for fans who had long wondered what became of the Borg drone who briefly experienced individuality. In Picard, Hugh has evolved into a leader of the Borg Reclamation Project, a mission to help former Borg drones, now called XBS, X-Borg, reclaim their identities and reintegrate into society. The years between Hugh's departure from TNG and his reappearance in Picard were marked by profound personal growth. In Picard, Hugh is no longer the vulnerable drone seeking guidance, but a compassionate leader dedicated to helping others like him. The Reclamation Project, based on a captured Borg cube, is a place where former drones can recover their autonomy and be freed from the oppressive control of the collective. Hugh's work embodies the theme of redemption, both for himself and for the Borg as a whole. In his interactions with Picard and Picard, Hugh once again serves as a reminder of the importance of individuality. He expresses frustration with the Federation's apathy toward the plight of the XBS, highlighting the moral complexity of a universe that often turns a blind eye to those who have suffered. Hugh's character arc in Picard is one of resilience, showing how far he has come from the confused drone the Enterprise first encountered. Hugh's death and legacy. Hugh's story in Picard ultimately ends in tragedy when he is killed by Romulan agents during an attempted uprising aboard the Borg cube. His death is a heartbreaking moment, not just for fans of the character, but for what Hugh represents. He had become a symbol of hope for the XBS and a testament to the idea that even those who have been stripped of their individuality can regain it and lead meaningful lives. Jonathan Del Arco's performance across TNG and Picard imbued Hugh with a unique sense of vulnerability and strength. Hugh's arc, from drone to individual to leader, reflects the broader themes of Star Trek: the search for identity, the importance of compassion, and the belief that even the most lost souls can find their way back. Hugh's journey may have ended, but his legacy within the Star Trek universe remains one of the most poignant,